Okay, here we go. So, update. I will update that. Okay, so that is updated. It did give me some license complaints, so we'll see how it goes. Basically, having Marmoset Toolbox, so Marmoset Toolbox, it's super simple to use. So honestly, even if you have never used it before, you can just follow this tutorial and you still know how to use it. I'm also just going to keep to the basics, and later on when we are rendering, that's when we will really go into Marmoset. So basically, Marmoset tool, you have your viewport, you have your materials, and you have your scene. Now, since right now I'm only covering baking, a lot of stuff here will be missed, so don't worry, later on in the tutorial we will go over that. What I want to do for baking is I want to basically open up the folder where I've exported my models. Here we go. And if we go to palette, I'm just going to break the .obj, HP and LP. And just click and drag them in here. It doesn't matter where you drag it, it will automatically import. Now movement is the same as Blender. So Alt left mouse button to rotate, Alt middle mouse to pan, Alt right mouse button to zoom in. Pretty basic stuff. So we have our low poly and we have our high poly. Now first thing I always like to do is I just like to go in my materials, select the first one and just keep pressing delete until everything is done. The first one will always stay, that's why you can just select that. Now, as you can see here, you see the little eye icon next to your model. With this, you can turn it on and off. So we can make sure that our model is on top of each other. Like that. Which looks totally fine to me. That's how we exported it. So, I'm not going to change the sky. I'm not going to do any fancy render settings. If you know Marmoset, you know what I'm talking about. What I will do is I will go to the top and press this little bread icon, which says New Bake Project. As soon as you click that, you can very quickly see high and low. So you guess what we want to do. We want to select our low poly and drag it under low, just like a folder. Select a high poly and drag it under high. Now, before we do anything, just click on low and turn off auto bake. The reason for this, because else whenever we change something, it will try to bake it when we have not even defined what we want to have baked. So, a cage. A cage is basically a hull around your low poly model, which will make sure that your entire high poly model is covered. If you press this little eye icon, you can see your high poly. Now, if your cage here, if I set it all the way low, you can see that sometimes the high poly is sticking through the low poly, because of course, although the shape is very similar, it's not one-on-one. So this cage basically says, okay, you go to your max offset down here, and you push this cage out a little bit, just so that everything in the high poly is covered. Now doing this, make sure that when we are baking, that we bake everything from the high poly and that we do not accidentally miss a piece. That's pretty much it. Now, for a model like this, it's very easy. If you have way more complicated models, then of course the cage also becomes a bit more complicated, and then you can do a bunch of painting stuff. But we're gonna keep it nice and simple. It's an intermediate tutorial, not an advanced one. So, we got the low poly now all done. That's literally it. Now all we need to do is we need to go into Bake Project 1. And if we just scroll down, first things first is, here let me bring this up, the output. So for the output, if you just go ahead and open it, and we go to our source files, we can go to textures, and in here I will make a folder called palette. And in this folder, what I always like to do is like to make another folder called bakes. And that's where I like to store stuff. So I'm just going to call this palette. Or let's do palette A, just in case we ever want to make a variation. And just leave it as a PSD. You can do TGA, but I find that PSD just covers everything. And sometimes TGA doesn't like position maps and everything, because it cannot do or at least it doesn't do 16 bits, I believe. So just press save. Samples, I always set it to 16. I don't need that much. Basically, the higher you set them, the more crisp your textures will be. But of course, the longer the baking will take. Samples is especially good for like the norm map. Ambient occlusions don't really need that many. So yeah, basically just set it to 16. Format, as I said, 8 bits is fine for now. And we might need to do 16 bits on some of these pieces later on. And for the rest, resolution, what I always do is I always bake at 4K. Because it's easier for me to scale down than to scale up. If I go for 4K and I say, okay, For my portfolio, I want to make the most amazing render. I do not care about the resolution. It's just about a nice picture. Then at least I have the 4K. While if I would use this in a game engine, well, a palette like this, I would probably go... for an actual game, I would go to like 512. Maybe 1024 if it's like a very important asset. But especially with pieces being on top of it, I would go for like 512. So honestly, it doesn't need much. Because it's quite small. So, maps. If you go to configure, here you can choose your maps. Now, we are choosing this based upon Substance Painter, which means that we need a normal map. A normal object basically is a world space normal map. We need a position map, and this one needs to be in 16-bit. A position just shows the overall position, gives us control over, like, for example, we want to have dirt going from the bottom to the top. We can do it with position map. Curvature map highlights the edges, basically. And for the rest, we also have a thickness map. I just bake it. I do not really need it very often. It's more for like characters. It just shows the thickness of every object, which sometimes is handy when we do certain generators inside of Substance Painter. Now, it asks you for material ID, but we just have one material, so we can just turn that off. We don't need anything special. And of course, ambient occlusion, which is contact shadows. So, we have these pieces. I'm just now going to tick them... Oh no, wait, actually, you know what? I'm going to tick them all off, because I first want to do a little test bake. So, this will show you the power. Now, here we have our palette. Just hide it. Even though it's hidden, it will still register, so don't worry. It's just so that we can see our low poly. And just having the normals selected, because normals often shows us if there are any errors, we can simply now press bake. Now, we are already at 4K. But as you can see, it only takes like a second for the normal to bake. The other maps might take a bit longer. So now we want to preview it on our mesh. Marmoset has this very handy thing where it has this little P button, which is just a preview button. And as soon as you press it, it will automatically create a nice material. And in that material, it should have the norm map. I don't know. That's a bug. It's supposed to just show the material, so that's weird. But anyway, normally it would show the norm map. I have no idea why it doesn't do it this time. That is strange. But at least it does register. So, we can have a look at our mesh. Now, what do we see? It's looking actually pretty good. So, this is the one, right? No, this is not. I have no idea. I don't trust it. I want to have control. In that case, I'm just going to go ahead and select the default. And then if we just go to our folder, just go to textures, palette, bakes, and select this normal and just drag it into your normal. And that will do the same thing. So, there we go. So the reason I want to do this is because I want to set my roughness a bit lower. Because I know that the roughness will be a bit low. So the first thing I notice is that we have some normal warping over here. See? It's a bit hard to see. I don't know. Maybe it's better to see if we like reduce the color a bit. Oh, so something is going wrong. Definitely. So basically, here, let's try and drag it on here. Oh no, wait, there we go. It has some trouble updating for some reason. As you could see, like it doesn't always update completely. I'm going to keep this quite white. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly go to my sky and just set the backdrop brightness darker. This makes it easier for me to see. So I can see that we have some norm map problems on mostly this plank over here and a little bit here on the sides. Now these problems though, we can fix them with geometry. Basically, it all depends on the lighting, but you can see that the smoothing is just a bit too strong for it to look good. For the rest, however, maybe like the center one can use some extra geometry. Yeah, here, these blocks can maybe use like a little bit of extra geometry. But for the rest, this is our low poly. So you can see how powerful non-maps are. That it just very quickly gives us an interesting look. So let's fix those things. Now, this is going to be super easy to fix because a palette is not very difficult. Like here, you can see where the problems are a little bit tricky. Now, all you really need to do is you need to go into edit mode. And I'm going to start by just placing a single edge here, and then Ctrl R and placing another one here. And I'm just gonna see if that fixes it. So it's a little bit of extra geometry, but it's not that much. So let's see if that will work. Now, I don't see the shading change too much. So we might need to do like some horizontal ones. But before we do that, I just want to go in and I'm going to just press place 2 over here. It might seem like a lot of geometry, but honestly, it's not that much. And the reason why I place 2 is just to be safe, and in turn I can also use that to like later on make my palettes feel a little bit more interesting by changing the yeah, you know what I mean, doing this stuff, moving the edges around a little bit. So I'm gonna start with those things. Okay, so we did those 3. Let's turn on wireframe toggle so that I can see. Oh yeah, and we had over here, I kind of want to just place 1 edge in between. And then you will see most likely the difference. Now, of course, if you really are, if you really like need every single edge, so you need to have it optimized as much as possible, then of course what you can do is, instead of what I do, which is an entire loop, you could say, okay, I only have a normal map problem here, so I literally just place a cut from here to here. And that would then do the exact same thing pretty much. Only thing is that you can get some angling, which I personally do not like. But seeing that this is 1, it's a tutorial, so I don't need to go too optimized. And 2, it's aimed at consoles and PC, so it does, yeah, it can handle the geometry. So let's go to palette low poly. Now, as soon as you export that, don't worry. UVs didn't change because you can add edges without changing the UVs. And it will automatically update in here, which you can see because now the normal maps look even worse. But this is because we just need to go to the bake project, press bake again. Now you can see here everything is now working, which at least as expected. So that's looking pretty good. And automatically those fixes that we added, they are also actually really good. Here they completely fixed everything I wanted to fix. So that is it for the baking.